Tell me about your personal why and how you're manifesting it in your business.
I am just an amazingly curious person and want to continue to learn and actually love helping people solve their problems.
I was personally very curious about the system that you developed. You call it the e-commerce revenue program framework. How does that system work?
And so we start out with what we call our discover phase of a life cycle.
What is, in your experience, the most important question any entrepreneur should be asking themselves?
I would be asking themselves if they have niched down enough within their industry.
Level up your business. Get my free insights every week at stevepreda.com/newsletter. Good day, dear listener. Steve Preda here with the Management Blueprint podcast. And my guest today is Ethan Giffin, the founder of the Groove Commerce e-commerce agency, a trusted advisor to manufacturers and distributors, and author of Closing the Digital Revenue Gap. Ethan, welcome to the show.
Very excited to be here, Steve. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Well, we've known each other for quite a few years, probably, 5-6 years.
2018?
2018. So that's eight years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
8 years.
So we've known each other a long time. I think you've been on one of the early versions of this podcast as well. But things have changed a lot since then. That was 5 years ago, and your business has transformed, and you have niched your business dramatically since. So I thought that it would be great to have a conversation and talk a little bit about, where you come from, what you're trying to achieve, what matters to you, and also the system that you developed, which I thought was very impactful for manufacturers. So before we dive into that, tell me about your personal why and how you're manifesting it in your business.
How many hours do you have, Steve? How many hours do you have? I think my personal why is I have a deep curiosity just about life and in general. I also very much have always enjoyed technology and driving technology, and I've always enjoyed sales. Very odd to put all of that together, but I think that's really has created my personal why of I am just an amazingly curious person and want to continue to learn and actually love helping people solve their problems that help make them money. It's pretty simple to me in that regard. I just love, if you would ask people in my EO chapter, they were like, oh, you always ask. I recently was with, they always ask great questions, So I love just being curious and helping people.
Yeah, definitely this where you are working is a very fast moving area, and lots of changes, especially with AI happening, and lots of innovation and technology, a lot to be curious about. And I was personally very curious about the system that you developed. You call it the e-commerce revenue program framework. And, we are framework junkies here on the Management Blueprint. And I'd love to learn about what that does for manufacturers, distributors, and what are the main pillars, and how does that system work? How do you get revenue for them?
It's a great question. So I've been building websites for well over 30 years and building e-commerce sites for, I think, 22 years at this point. 2004 was my first really in-depth professional e-commerce website. And so over that time, I've worked with a ton of different types of organizations, and, just a lot of common themes started to present themselves. And as Groove has continued to evolve, we began to work a lot more with manufacturers and distributors that wanted to create online buyer portals so that their customers could come in and buy from them. And it's, they call it B2B e-commerce, and it's very, very different from B2C e-commerce. Generally, you've got to be approved to buy. There's just a lot of things that goes into kind of replacing working with a salesperson, so to speak, in many of these industries. And I just found a lot of common threads, and I found a group of folks that may not be as digitally mature in the e-commerce space as other folks. And I needed to lay out a system that both the CEO, the CFO, the CTO, and the CMO could all understand and work within and have some level of accountability within that.
Yeah. Just one thing I'd like to mention here. So I had a Visage member when I still had my Visage groups who was running this distributorship, and they really struggled with this idea that they wanted to sell online, but they were afraid of upsetting the distributors, and you didn't want to be seen to be competing with. So it was just a very complex and politically difficult situation. So you're probably going to talk about that as well.
Well, it's a little bit different, right? So the concept of what we're doing is actually helping someone that has, maybe they're a manufacturer and they sell to distributors. They're not selling to the public. They're selling to an approved group of their customers that are able to come in and buy from them anytime they want. 24/7 without human intervention. And so that's the concept of what we create. So we actually help them create a real digital revenue channel within their organization. And people are like, well, wait, does that mean you don't need salespeople? No, most of these organizations have, long running sales teams. And actually the sales team can leverage the platforms to help their customers and accounts buy more so that they can spend more time actually selling than, hand typing in orders and being an order taker. And so it allows their customers to come in and reorder whenever they want and buy at more frequent intervals and see their pricing, have their payment terms, et cetera. Very different than, say, going to an online t-shirt shop, putting your credit card in, and they ship it to you. Sometimes, you literally, they're able to buy on credit and you're tracking how much credit they've utilized within the ERP system. It's a very, very different, much more complex transaction. And we think that manufacturers and distributors should have at least 10% of their overall revenue flowing through a digital platform like that. And so our average customer is anywhere between $100 and $400 million. And so, that's 10 to 50 million bucks. And so some industries with more digitally mature customers can go much higher than 10%. And it's just a much cheaper way to operate.
Okay, so let's say I'm a manufacturer and I manufacture widgets. And these widgets are being distributed through vendors who install these widgets into machines. Retail customers don't understand our widgets, so we're not selling to retail. And we are fully sales people based, and we'd like to go online, we'd like to get 10%, 15% online. What does it take for us to transform our business to partially online?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. That's a great question. I'm going to take it right through it very, very easily. So I will say most CEOs or VPs of marketing will think about a project like this just as a website. And that's the wrong way to think about this. This needs to be a true revenue channel within the organization, a true top-down channel that has accountability from all sides, because it's much, much greater than that. If you're talking about 10, 20, 30, 50, $100 million going through a system like this, it's not just building a website. And that's a really common mistake that the prospects and customers that we've gotten have often done. Or their IT person says, oh, we have a WordPress website, let's use WooCommerce for free. Or I saw Shopify on Jim Cramer, let's try to use Shopify. Most of those direct to consumer systems don't have the right kind of features and functionality, nor is the process to pick the software first. So what we actually tell our customers and prospects is, hey, we've got to take a step back here. And we've got a 5-step life cycle that takes about 3 years for them to go from kind of zero to kind of fully digitally transformed in terms of their e-commerce. And so we start out with what we call our discover phase of the life cycle. And that is where we work and consult and understand, and we build alignment between the sales team, the finance team, customer service and operations team, the warehouse, and the IT team to build this kind of alignment where all the groups of the organization are working together towards a single goal instead of being siloed off like what traditionally happens. In that process, we're helping them to pick a software to utilize to run all of this, and that will connect to their ERP system accordingly. The next phase in the process is the build phase. And that is kind of more traditional, like any website, where we architect, design, and we build the full system. And for a modern manufacturer, that generally takes, I would say a good 6 to 8 months to go through that process. Some are a little faster, some are a little bit longer, depending upon the organization.
But is this because there are thousands of SKUs, or why does it take so long?
Because there's complex integrations with their accounting and ERP systems. The catalog is often not ready for prime time. Maybe it's in the ERP, but it's got a lot of internal slang, doesn't have photos of everything. They just are missing data or specifications. Often Amazon, for instance, has better product descriptions on a manufacturer's website and more measurements. That can happen. So these are the kind of things that we need to go to. So the discover and build phase can take anywhere between 8 and 12 months or longer, depending upon the size of the organization. The next step, the next life cycle here is called the pilot phase. And this is what people forget about. What they don't do is they don't pilot these types of systems with a handful of their top customers that would never fire them or never that are willing to go on a little bit of a R&D journey with them. And they don't pilot these systems and have them start to utilize it in a white glove way. And they don't often have the same kind of white glove service with their internal sales teams to help them get going. And so this pilot phase is very important to kind of start to see early adoption, both internally and with the customer.
So
then we kind of...
sorry to interrupt you there. But I'm curious about that. How do you get those customers to actually invest time in piloting a system like that when they have a salesperson that knows them, that knows their needs, and
Yeah. Well, generally, so generally, again, up to this point, we've internally surveyed and built a system that can handle these customers. But most of your top customers want you to succeed. And quite honestly, they've probably got some friction in the sales process currently is holding them back. And they may be like, oh, I can just, go in and press one button and reorder my weekly order from you. Oh, thank God. And so most of the time, right? Most of the time they volunteer. In fact, these are the ones that you want to pilot the system, the ones that are willing to do that. And you need to take them through that process with a white glove level of service, even holding weekly office hours if you need to. But what you want to see in that pilot is see those customers make not only their first order, but maybe their second, third, or fourth order, depending upon what their typical intervals are. And so we want to get that up and running and get some early kind of wins there and get both the internal team and the customers feeling like, hey, this is really working for us. And then the next phase after that, we call it the activate phase. Again, these websites are very different than, a direct-to-consumer site where they usually have an approved list of customers, and they're hidden behind a password. The next phase is the activate phase, and that's where you want to get all of your customers in the system, placing their first and second orders and getting it going. And you want to roll that out. Generally, it might take you a good, 10 to 12 months to get everybody rocking and rolling with this part of the system. But once they do, and once they start making their first, second, third order, you've built muscle memory over time. So this activation phase is really important. I was recently talking to the VP of marketing at a $400 million distributorship. And he was telling me that they had invested, 7 figures in building this system. And they spent 18 months connecting it into all their financial systems. Again, $400 million. And they had only done, about $200,000 in their first 9 months having the system live. And what they didn't do was they didn't figure out how to activate their customer base. Because I asked them, how many customers do you have? Oh, we've got about 180,000 customers. Well, how many are in the system? 15,000. And next thing, and I'm like, well, you haven't done yourselves any favor here. So you need a very, very solid plan to activate. That takes about the first 2 years, right? The first year is kind of architecting and building the system. Year 2 is really piloting and activating the system. But by year 3, you've got more mature scorecards. You're starting to find ways to optimize, to reduce friction in the buying process. Maybe you're introducing more products to your catalog. You're introducing your customers to more product offerings that you may have, or maybe you're finding even new industries that you can easily plug into the system and generate more revenue. And we call that the optimize phase. And that continues to just spin in a flywheel once that's up and running.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So I wonder, how do you get the salespeople to buy in? Is there an advantage for them, or they feel like sometimes that the digital channel is going to compete with them?
Yeah, well, and that buy-in can come from a lot of feelings. And I've had to stand up in front of national sales meeting audiences and talk about these kind of things. And so I would say out of the gate, salespeople are nervous that you're trying to take their commission away. When their customers buy through these systems, they need to get the commission off their accounts as they normally would. Maybe you raise expectations, right, in terms of what you're looking for them to sell, in terms of annual quota. Maybe you want them to sell a little bit more now that they have this electronic tool, but they need to share in the revenue that comes through these systems. The second part of them is oftentimes McKinsey Consulting has said that 70% of all digital transformation projects in the mid-market fail to meet their original stated goal. So what happens is that people make wrong decisions, or maybe they pick software before they put alignment together. And so the salespeople, maybe they've had a poor experience or two with a CRM rollout or an ERP rollout or a previous e-commerce rollout that wasn't thought fully through. And so you've got to figure out how to build that confidence and trust back with folks. And then the last piece is you got to give them a voice in the process. A traditional website project may not include the head of sales for the organization, but for our discoveries, we like them to attend at least the first, couple days of that.
So this is a huge project, 2 or 3 years working with a client. How important it is that you keep an eye on the pulse of the client and keep listening and making sure that the buy-in continues to be strong?
Yeah, I think it is important. One of the best parts about all of this is everything is trackable. We can track which customers have logged in. We can track how frequently they log in. We can track how frequently they buy. And then we can leverage technology to go out and kind of tickle them, remind them, hey, it's been a bit since you've ordered. Why don't you come back and check this out? It is an ongoing relationship, but that relationship changes and evolves, over the course of working together. I think once you get over the kind of discover and build phases and into the pilot, the relationship begins to evolve and change, and clients get really excited about, the first $100,000 in orders that come through the system, the first time a six-figure order comes through the system unattended. There's a lot of things that, you want to think about and celebrate along the way when you're working together.
Do you find that clients are willing to think long term and have these 3-year plans where they are willing to invest time and money into building this channel out over a period of time, as opposed to trying to get a silver bullet solution that will happen overnight?
I think it kind of depends on where they are. Like from our client point of view, if they've bought into working with us, they believe and understand that this isn't just a one project kind of operation to build a 10 or 15% revenue, channel within the organization. There's no long-term contracts on our side to do it. It's kind of broken up into kind of multiple phases and pieces. And we actually do that so we can make sure that they're ready to move on to the next step in that. There is some heavy lifting that comes, from the first year of actually building a system and getting all the integration parts working through. That is challenging. I get questions often. There's a buying committee that makes decisions on these types of project and expenses, and the CFO is always a part of that conversation. And I think the transparency that we do offer a CFO to say, listen, this is what you should expect over a 3-year period. If both sides do what they've agreed to do here, this is what it can get to. And I believe that maybe it might cost them $50 or $60 an order for a human in their call center to actually get the order over the phone and type it in and kind of follow along with that, from an ongoing kind of basis. And it might cost, $3, $4, $5 for an order of that scale to come out of an e-commerce system. So there's definitely optimization that happens all the way around. Salespeople are able to do more, and customer service is able to focus on actually helping people, not entering orders.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I was wondering, so let's say my widget manufacturer, we get 10% into the digital channel in a period of 3 years, maybe 10, 15%. How much of that is accretive to the actual sales in your experience, and how much of it is kind of cannibalizing some of the actual sales?
I think it's a little bit of a both. Customers will generally buy more from you if it's easier to buy from you. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a real optimization in terms of expenses and costs that happen when you bring it all on.
So there's a little bit of a top line growth and a lot of profitability improvement, margin improvement.
Margin improvement.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So, Ethan, you're coming out of the book, Closing the Digital Revenue Gap. What prompted you to write this book and what it's about?
I felt like I've got over 20 years of stories for being on the road. And I felt like it would be a lot of the same things a lot of the same challenges would happen over and over again on these types of projects. And so I sat down and wanted to really write about these stories and the challenges and how we made it through them, and give the reader just some things to think about as they're going through challenges like that, and just understand that they're not alone, that other people, that other organizations have had similar challenges over the year. And so I wanted to get that out on paper and, just have that in a holdable form. Sorry, I don't have them. I'm still waiting for the hardcovers to come in, so I don't have one to show you today. But the reasoning is I felt like I wanted to tell my story and the stories of the journey I've been on of building these types of sites and systems over the years.
Yeah, I'm sure you have a lot of war stories. Can you share one or two with us that is something that was really difficult, but then it created a breakthrough, or someone who was very skeptical and then came around?
Yeah, I think one of the big stories that I like to talk about is quiet friction, okay? And every business has quiet friction in it that may affect their customers and they don't even know it. And so here where I'm from in Baltimore, they recently passed a law where it's actually 5 cents for every grocery bag that you use at the grocery store, right? There's one grocery store in the area that carries a handful of my favorite things to make pizza. They carry these special pepperonis, special cheese, like all the things. And I love making pizza. And I'm always so happy when I'm going to this store to get those things because I know I'm going to make pizza and I love it. Well, with this law coming and happening, most grocery stores that you go to that have a self-checkout will have an option. How many bags did you use? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And the bags are right there. And it's the honor system. Well, this grocery store chain at their self-checkout locks the grocery bags up. And you actually have to go get the self-checkout assistant to come over, swipe his badge, type in a whole bunch of characters on the touchscreen and then get a bag out of a locked cabinet and gives it to you. And it's created so much friction with me that I actually hate going to that grocery store now. And it's kind of ruined the experience of me like buying, 3 of my favorite things to do my favorite thing. If I ask most manufacturers to say, think about your business, is it actually hard to buy from you? Sit and ponder that a bit. What kind of quiet friction do you have within your organization? And most of them, you can see the steam come out of their ears once they realize what's creating those types of challenges for them. What kind of quiet friction do you have in your company that might not make people like leave immediately, but if somebody else gives them the opportunity to buy what you sell from them much easier without making it a pain in the ass, they may like kind of gradually float away from you. Oh, yeah. Right. And I think that's where you start to just like miss compatibility with all of it.
Yeah. I love it that you approach it from this angle. It's the friction. Because if you remove the friction, then essentially the flow of business accelerates. It's like you expand the gorge and then it's got a lot more flow is going to go through it. And it's so easy to miss the friction because you don't see it. It's something that is holding you back. And if you just remove it, and it's probably cumulative. If you have all these little things that don't count on their own, they are immaterial on their own, but cumulatively they are absolute disasters. Love it. So we live in the AI age, and I can't avoid asking a question on AI as well. How are your clients, customers, take advantage of AI?
It's all over the place, right? I would say a lot of our customers are using AI to help with an email here or there. Maybe they have some Industry 4.0 type of IoT devices connected in their factory that are able to leverage AI for creating dashboards. But it really is generally through the use of a software is how we're seeing that kind of happen overall. But one of the areas that we found AI to be fantastically helpful these days is helping to build a public-facing catalog, being able to leverage tools within AI to suck in data from various sources and get that into a structured format that we can leverage and import into a system. So that we're doing those types of projects a lot with folks. They're still looking for coaching and help in those areas. So AI is still an emerging area, but we're trying to like every day figure out how to leverage AI more and more with what we're doing.
Is it possible to use AI in optimizing these web properties, these e-commerce systems?
I don't think so yet. I mean, I think AI can make recommendations about things, but I wouldn't trust AI to just auto-optimize what I was doing. I would also say that most of the folks, unless you're really getting 50, 60, 100,000 visits on a single web page, 1 million visits on a web page, like you're not getting enough to statistically create a winner in that. So it's all about using those types of things responsibly. But we are seeing AI really come to light in terms of the traditional e-commerce search, right? E-commerce search has always been keyword driven, but we have certain platforms and tools that we plug into sites now that are able to search PDFs and even CAD files and all types of things in terms of being able to answer questions.
That's very interesting. So Ethan, you've been running a business for over 2 decades now, at least. That's what I'm aware of. We mentioned the 2004. I think Groove was started in 2004.
7, officially 7, but the precursor days before it was actually Groove.
Okay, all right. So 2007. Still, it's coming up on 20 years. So what is, in your experience, the most important question any entrepreneur should be asking themselves?
I would be asking themselves if they have niched down enough within their industry. I would say that, that's probably one of like my biggest mistakes, like is not niching down fast enough and really focusing in a single area with that. So that would be the thing that I would want to say if I was an entrepreneur, and I have told people that and to write a book.
Is this partially why you wrote the book?
It is.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I've been doing more and more keynote speaking, and I knew I needed a book if I wanted to elevate myself to the next level.
So before the wrap up, I can't hold myself back bringing this up, but you're also an accomplished DJ, and you started your career DJing, and you still do it sometimes for friends.
Yes.
What did DJing teach you as an e-commerce entrepreneur? How do you see the life differently, or the business world differently because of DJing?
Well, that's a great question, and it's affected me. I started DJing when I was 15 years old. I'm 51 now, and I do focus now on working with some nonprofits locally here in Baltimore, and I DJ their galas, and we put out a big show. And I would say that interestingly, DJing has moved to digital. When I started as a DJ, I had 12-inch records that we would put on a turntable, and you'd have to have a dolly, and you'd have crates of records that you would have to haul around. And now I can have 50,000 songs on my laptop in front of me, and I have these devices that spin like turntables, and I can DJ on. And that, quite frankly, that transition for me to go from analog to digital was quite difficult. And I really did my own little mini digital transformation to figure out how to do that. And I was against it for a long time. And it really helped me understand more what our customers are going through as they're thinking about that and having much more empathy. So it is that transition. I used to work in a nightclub, and we had to bring somebody in from Italy to program this lighting equipment that we had at the time in the 1990s. And now I have a light show that is driven by the waveforms in the music, and it manages the lights through AI. And, I had it set up within an hour of getting the software. And so it's just been tremendous to understand and see like how that has gone from analog to digital. And it's been very helpful on the journey to teach our clients how to go from analog to digital as well.
That's lovely. I mean, that's such a huge challenge with all this technological evolution going on to keep up with that and stay fresh and stay young with the technology. And you're doing that. So that's awesome. So if we have in the audience some manufacturers, distributors, or someone who is very passionate about e-commerce and wants to talk to you, learn from you, where can they go and where can they connect? Where can they get your book? How does it work?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if this resonated, if this message resonated with any of your listeners, we're waiting our first initial batch of books to come in, and I've held some back to give away. And I would love to offer a complimentary book to any of the listeners of this podcast that it resonated with, as well as offer a free consultation as part of that. And if they go to B2B ecombook.com, B2B ecom book.com, they can request a free copy, and we'll send them out as soon as we get them in.
Sounds good. So B2B is B number 2B, right?
B number 2B. Yep.
So definitely check this out. And if you enjoyed this show, then make sure you subscribe and you keep coming back, because every week I get an exciting entrepreneurs on the show. And Ethan, thanks for coming and sharing your goodies and wisdom. So
thank you so much for having me. You always appreciate seeing you.
That was a great pleasure. Right. Thank you. I appreciate you listening today. Stay connected. Sign up for my free weekly newsletter at stevebreda.com/newsletter.